All right, welcome to the Eric Tries Too Hard podcast. This week I've got Casey on. Casey, how you going? How you?
Not too bad, man.
It's a
How you
good
doing?
start. I'm doing very well. Can't speak apparently, but you know it's a Sunday morning, so that's not a good sign.
Right, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So you are a stand-up comic.
Sorta, yeah.
So
I'm trying to be.
that's
I started a few months ago, so I'm
nice.
I'm weary about calling myself a comic yet, but eventually we'll get there.
In my experience, anytime an artist is hesitant to call themselves an artist because they know that they have room to improve is a very good sign of your future.
Well, I hope so. I hope you're right about that one. We'll see. We'll see.
So where are you located?
I'm in Minneapolis.
Oh, nice. Okay. So what's the comedy scene like up there?
It's actually pretty good. I've been doing it a few months, and I've met already so many people who seem like they know what they're doing at least. So if they're faking me out, they're pretty good at it. So
Yeah, that's really cool. How often can you get up there? Do you have, like,
right now, with my nobody knows who I am status, I get up about once or twice a week. I actually go to 4 or 5 different open mics a night, or not a night, a week. But since I'm just some random jerk up the street, nobody really lets me on stage yet. So, but we're getting there. It'll be
but you're
fun.
right. Let's say you're there. That's step one. You got to do what you got to
Yeah,
do to break in.
yeah. You got to pay your dues before you can really become somebody you want to be. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, so you only started a few months ago. What got you to go? I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna start doing stand up.
I've been wanting to do it for, oh man, ever since I learned how to write. Pretty much, I was writing anything I found funny. I wrote down in a notebook or somewhere. I've got things just scattered all over the place. Then last summer I hit some tough times and actually had to move back home in with my parents, which is hilarious on its own, I guess. And I figured, life really couldn't get any worse. What's going to be so bad about going on stage for 3 minutes and having nobody laugh at me? So uh, I wrote out a quick little 3-minute set, and I went up there and actually did a lot better than I thought I would. So, the bug kind of hit me, and now here we are a few months later. I've done, 10 or so open mics, and I've got a show booked next month at the House of Comedy in the Mall of America here in Minneapolis.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. So okay, so you lived there most of your life, or?
Yeah, yeah. I lived. I was born pretty much in Minneapolis, and we moved out to the suburbs when I was like 10.
Yeah.
And then 2 years ago or 3 years ago now, I moved out to Denver just on a random whim for no
Yeah.
reason.
Good timing.
And yeah, exactly. And I had a lot of fun out there, but spent the money in the wrong areas and ended up having to come back. But it happens. So.
Yeah. You got stories to tell, I bet, though.
Oh yeah, There's some good ones out there.
Oh yeah.
It's a whole new culture out there. There's a lot of barefoot hippies that like to run around out there. So.
I had a couple of friends who I'm in the psych field. That's what I do in real life.
Nice.
And I had a couple of friends who did like an experimental psych master's program out in Denver, and they just stayed there. They're like, no, it's great. You just relax, and that's where you work. And that's fantastic. That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's a great spot.
So I don't know much about current Minneapolis, but I do. I guess I don't know, like 7 years ago, I went on tour with a band from Minneapolis,
Sure.
and they had nothing but great stories about how awesome like the art scene was, music, comedy, everything in Minneapolis.
Yeah,
Which made me,
it's pretty amazing. I didn't really appreciate it until I actually moved to Denver. I was actually working a little bit in the music scene in Minneapolis before.
Oh, really?
I left.
Nice.
I was managing a band. I did that for 4 or 5 years, so I kind of get the whole thing. How when nobody knows who you are, all you do is get on stage and like perform, and you got to pay your dues and all that stuff. So the music scene though in Minneapolis, a band like, for example, like Killswitch Engage will come through, and they'll sell out in a couple of days. In Denver, I was able to get a ticket for a Killswitch Engage concert 2 hours before the concert in a venue that held about 500 people.
Yeah.
So, you know, I didn't really appreciate the music or the art scene in Minneapolis until I left. And now that I'm back, I can really see what it's worth. You know, we have numerous districts all over that have museums, and there's just, you know, so many different little art studios. And the comedy scene is huge. You know, you see the same 30 or 40 people at open mics every night, and that's a lot.
That is a lot. I was going to say, especially when you're, you know, cutting your teeth fighting for time, like that makes sense. Now, with the open mics in your area, is it typically mostly all comics, or do you have a fair share of non-comics who will stop in?
There are a couple. Most of them, you know, during the week are just comics and stuff. But on Monday nights we have the Acme Comedy Company. They have their open mic, and that's like the open mic to be at. And that room consistently fills up with about 200 non-comics.
Wow, jeez.
For free open mic comedy. So
I bet that feels a lot better. You said you managed a band for a couple years. I bet that, like, I mean, I've been in bands my whole life. To have 200 random people come see a band is insane. That's the greatest show you'll play all year because you didn't have to lift a finger, and you have a built-in audience. That's something that I always think about comparing with comedy versus music. Do you find that so I guess you find that you get a much bigger, I guess, look-in audience for comedy than you ever would for a band.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the same thing with the band. You know, when you get the band going and you get the buzz going, your first show is going to have 1 million people at it. But then, you know, your fifth show is going to have 3 people, and 2 of them are sleeping with the drummer. So
yep, 2 of them are sleeping with the drummer. Yeah, fair.
You know, it's kind of crazy, but yeah, it's just nice to see that. Actually, on Friday this week, I was trying to get up at the an open mic called the Comedy Corner Underground, and it's in this awesome little basement that, you know, would terrify a 4-year-old. And there were so many people there that weren't comics that I couldn't even hang out in the room and watch.
Wow, yeah.
Because, you know, I'd rather have fans of comedy watching than some jerk who's seen the same 3 guys every week, you know. But,
yeah,
it's a fun time down here for sure.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. All right, sweet. Well, so with and I know this is more for the future because, as you said, you've been doing this a few months. You're working on your skills, and I know the common comparison doing comedy, it's like you have to learn how to play guitar, but on stage in front of people.
Right.
And so, like, I know that this would be more down the line, but what do you think you're going to end up using from your experience of managing a band for marketing yourself as a comedian? I imagine there's a lot of parallels there, especially when you have such a big group of people who would just come for comedy.
Right. The main thing, all you really have to do is network. You know, it's the same thing. You know, when you play a show as a band, you talk to the other bands and you make friends with them and do this. You know, that's all it is really with anything. You know, a lot of jobs you get these days are because you know someone who can hook you up with stuff like that. And so, you know, in comedy, if I don't get on stage, I'm staying to watch other people's sets, and then I'll talk to them about it. Whereas, you know, a lot of people will sign up, they don't make the cut, they don't get on the list, and then they bail.
Yeah.
You know, that was one thing that always kind of bothered me when I was working with a band. You know, if we were going up 3rd or 4th, the first 2 bands would play and go home.
Yep.
And so it's just kind of like, well, you know, stick around and watch the other bands, you know, make friends and do stuff like that. So, you know, that's where I draw a lot of the parallels between, you know, stand-up and music. It is a lot of the same, where, you know, you want to find yourself on stage, you want to get people to hear your stuff, but then the main difference in comedy is once they hear a joke, it loses its luster, whereas with a band, once you hear a song, you like it a little bit more and more and more, and each time you hear it, it gets better, where it's the opposite for jokes. So.
Yeah, no, it's that's what's so interesting about, I guess, putting out content in each medium, is that with a band, if you put out too much content, you run the risk of putting out too much shitty content.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but anytime if there's a band who puts out a record, I like half the songs and don't like the other half, it's unlikely, or maybe they got like 2 good albums and then they put out 2 shitty albums.
Right.
It's unlikely I'm gonna go see them at their next show because I'm like, well, they just muddied the water with a bunch of shit that I don't want to see.
Yeah.
With a comic, you can at least be like, well, it's most likely that whatever new stuff that I hear tonight that I didn't hear 6 months ago or whatever, it's going to be even better because he's
exactly. Yeah, I really like. Well, I like going to see bands that I like, but then when there's that dreaded thing that most bands do, if they have a new album that hasn't come out yet and they're touring, when they play a song off that album that nobody's heard yet, it's kind of a bummer, because you don't really know it. You're going there to see what you know. Yeah. And so, that's why I like going to concerts all the time still. I still try to go to 1 or 2 a month, but...
like in band sets, even local bands are typically 30-minute sets. Mm-hmm. And if you're an audience member who has never heard a single song by that band, that's 30 minutes that's a lot to process. That is a lot to process. Even if you're a really good band who writes songs that are different from one another, like, that's still a lot. Like, I don't know. It's very strange to me just seeing the difference when you're talking about, like, a band first starting out getting 20 or 30 minutes, and then a comic who gets 3 to 5.
Right.
And I almost sometimes see, like, man, I probably would have liked that band a lot more if they only played 15 minutes.
Right. Right, yeah, get like 3 or 4 good songs in there, because if they have a category or a catalog of 15 songs and they have to shave 10 of them out, they're going to play only their best ones. Yeah. And that's where a lot of comics, can benefit from having so little time. You've got hundreds of jokes written in your notebook, and then you got to pick 5 of them to smash into 3 minutes.
Yeah, that makes pretty. I got some great advice a while ago from a much bigger band than anyone I've been in, and their drummer was telling me, he was like, it's not about building this great repertoire of songs that you can interchange, not yet anyway. Mm-hmm. And he's like, it's so much more important to just build a great half hour. And you don't even have to be playing music for that half hour. It's usually, and this is me talking now, is probably 20 to 21 minutes of music, and then about 5 to 6 minutes of in between, and then leave those extra 3 minutes for when something inevitably goes wrong. Just have that buffer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the same thing. Comics, you'll hear, if you talk to them a lot, you'll hear about them having their type 5, and that's their 5 minutes of their best jokes. And that's what you want to do if you get 5 minutes at an open mic. You can record that with a video, and then you can send that off to your various festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah, you seem I imagine anybody going into stand-up would be relatively knowledgeable. That's probably a stretch, but you seem particularly knowledgeable about the industry, which makes me think you've been kind of a comedy buff for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say I'm new to performing, but I'm not new to comedy.
Yeah.
I've been watching comedy for 15 years or so. When I first started, I was watching Comedy Central until my mom came in and took the remote away or something. But
I remember before going to camp in the summer, I'd catch reruns of The Daily Show with Craig Kilborn. Like that's when we're talking here. Like,
that's old school. Yeah.
Well, I remember when. How old are you, by the way?
I'm 30.
Yeah. I'm about to be 29 in like 48 hours, and so really? So we're both the same age. And so so when oh my God, when I remember when we got Comedy Central, like when that. I don't know if it was when it first became a thing or when my cable provider just got it, and it was much of it was just stand up after stand up after stand up, and all I'd known of that was my parents would have me watch Seinfeld with them like every week. Right. So I knew what stand-up was really early, and watching those, I was like, wait a minute, this is a channel where people are just going to try to make me laugh. The greatest thing you can do for someone? Awesome. Yeah. Who was the first comic who really spoke to you?
I remember watching Jim Carrey when I was a child. Yeah. He had that weirdo multicolored 1994 shirt. and he was just going bananas on stage, and I was losing it. I couldn't handle it, and that's the first stand-up I remember watching.
Yeah.
Just him doing his Jim Carrey thing, and
Yeah.
I was sold. Every time I saw just that one guy on stage, I was always watching, no matter who it was, or woman,
Yeah.
I guess, if we
Yep.
want to get into that battle. But
Well, so okay, so who was the first? Thank you for sharing that memory with me. That's really awesome.
of course,
You painted a nice picture there. But yeah, like especially with the word going bananas, I feel like that's the only way you can describe what Jim Carrey does on stage.
Oh yeah, he's crazy.
That
Maybe
could have
not
also been the club he was playing at the time too. You never know.
true.
So who was the first? Oh, sorry, no, go.
Well, I was just gonna say, Jim Carrey is not like, you don't think of Jim Carrey and think of stand-up anymore. Obviously you have all his movies and stuff, but that's what was really interesting, to watch him grow and make so many movies that people don't like anymore, because what he came from,
Yeah.
what he came from was so goofy and crazy. And now all of a sudden he's making a movie like The Number 23, where he's just a psychopath, and then sending out that creepy video to like Emma Stone or whatever that was. Where I don't know if you saw that.
No,
where he,
you know what? I passed on that one. I went from 22 to 24. I skipped right over that shit.
Yeah. Don't even.
Who was the first comic who you I guess fully took in, and I guess were old enough to be to really get what was going on? That you loved, that you really loved, not just the first one you saw.
Well, coming from Minneapolis, a lot of people talk about Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah.
That honestly has nothing to do with why I was introduced to him. I just heard something I believe it was on the radio when I first heard one of his jokes. And, I looked into him in the beginning stages of the internet, because, I'm old too, so.
Yeah, we had shitty internet back then. It was not like this internet.
Yeah, so I typed in, Mitch Hedberg comedy, and waited a week for the results to load. And I think that was the first person who I really followed and understood.
Yeah.
And really appreciated for how clever he was. And he was, still to this day, I'll listen to his albums, and it gets me every single time.
Yeah. Which is shocking, because they're two-liners mostly.
Yeah.
And so those are the jokes that are most at risk of growing stale, but his don't. And we can make I guess the argument that maybe that's because his delivery is so unique.
Right.
But it's still, the jokes were so clever. Have you ever seen his, I know obviously, I imagine you've seen his Comedy Central Presents, the 22-minute version.
Yeah.
Did you ever see, I think it was on Mitch Altogether, the extra DVD where it's the full show of that, the full 45 minutes?
No, I never did see that. I wonder.
Yeah, dude, it's spoiler alert, he bombs the entire time.
Oh, really?
So, because the crowd didn't get it. There were so many jokes they didn't get. So what ended up happening was, what you see in that 22 minutes where he just kills it, I would say at least 11 of those minutes, maybe up to 15, are the last 11 to 15 minutes of the special, where he just rapid fires old jokes that he knows is going to work to get laughs. And most of the jokes from the other half of the 22-minute version are jokes that bombed, but they just shipped in laughter and crowd responses from other times.
Wow.
I shouldn't say he bombed. It was more like on stage he was talking about it like he was bombing, because the crowd was just 10-second delay, or not 10, 5-second delays before they got the joke.
Sure.
Sometimes he was getting more laughs for joking about bombing than he was for the actual jokes.
Right.
And if you watch the end, it gets super awkward because they keep red lighting him. They keep lighting him over and over again. But he's like, no, I need to get this footage, and he kept doing it. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's watching the two back-to-back is a whole other experience.
That sounds funny.
Granted, it's been about 10 years since I watched the full version, so I could be remembering a little off, but it's unreal.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, as far as live stand-up, are there any particularly I guess influential comedians that you've seen live, or any live shows you went to that kind of And I should also ask, what's the first time you saw live comedy? Because that's a whole other animal when you come from like being obsessed with specials and then you see it live. It's unreal.
This is gonna be hilarious. The first comic I ever saw live, I was probably about 22 or 23, and I saw Gallagher.
Yeah, at 22.
The dude who everyone hates.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says, man. I love that guy. I think he's hilarious. You know, I understand his similarities to Carlin and the big guys like that, you know, where he just seems, if he wasn't smashing watermelons, he would be nobody.
Yeah.
That guy was so funny.
Yeah.
Where,
just a natural funny kind of.
Yeah. I mean, and he came out and he played a venue where I had seen more metal shows than anything else in my entire life. And he comes out on this just crappy stage and starts throwing chocolate syrup and scrambled eggs and all over it. And I'm pretty sure it was still there when that band I was working with played there about a month later. Like, we couldn't figure out why the floor was sticky, and it was just, you know, coming up with watermelon seeds everywhere. It was ridiculous.
He doesn't use seedless? That's just irresponsible.
I don't know. Maybe he wants little watermelon plants to pop up all over the place. But
he's like a modern day Johnny Appleseed. He's just smashing fruit all over the place.
That's awesome. Oh yeah.
So I take it you're a big metal fan?
Yeah, I'm kind of straying away from it a little bit, getting more into the Taylor Swifts and Katy Perrys of the world, but
for realsies?
I don't know. Some of their stuff is pretty catchy.
No, okay, I have talked about this at least with one guest before. I fucking love talking about this. So first off, I grew up listening to punk, and for me, it's all of my friends grew up and went from punk to metal. So that was their adult music.
Right.
But so recently, and I guess this started maybe 5-6 years ago, Katy Perry's one of them, along with I'm trying to forget, and Kesha, and a bunch of these other female lyrics aside, female pop stars,
of course,
who were putting out the catchiest shit I'd ever heard in my life.
Right.
And I could not grasp why I was liking this music. I thought my music taste may have been getting shittier, or as I was getting older, I'm losing my conviction. But I think what's happening is that a lot of the writers for these groups and these artists are, and a lot of times, like, you know, the singer Goldfinger writes One Direction songs. Like, that's crazy. So maybe it's a combination of that, but also I feel like pop music, they figured out what to take from alternative music and to integrate into pop music to make pop music better art, but keep the unbelievable catchiness and hard. So what do you think?
There's definitely a formula to writing a song that sticks with people. One thing I remember when I first started working with the band, they're long broken up by now, but their first 4 or 5 songs that we put onto like a little demo, nothing repeated. There was no structure.
Yeah.
It was just like, all right, let's play this part 4 times, this part 6 times, and then this part 4 times, and there's our song. Once they started writing songs where it was like verse, chorus, verse, they got way better. And it's not just because, you know, they got better musically, but people were able to recognize things. And so by the end of the song, you want to be able to have the crowd sing the chorus to you because they've heard it 3 times.
Yep. The way I think about it is, if I want to send an email to you and I have a list of instructions of things I need you to do, I'm not going to put the list out of order. I'm not going to not number the list. I'm not going to not indent. I'm not going to like ramble and make vague directions. I'm going to try to make it as easy for you to take in as possible. Even if, and so that's kind of how I think about when, now all of a sudden, I almost kept going, and I was like, oh, my metaphor's going to fall apart if I keep trying to compare it to. That was the best, closest it goes. But you want to give it in a delivery system, and I know that's not universal for all art and for all music, but at the same time, like, we had mentioned before, it's a lot to take in if you haven't heard anything from a band, and they play for 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's tough, but it's the way things are these days. You have to grab attention within 30 seconds or you're out.
3 seconds.
Yeah, especially that's why the thing I've been doing on stage that I'm trying to screw around with is you see a lot of people will come up and they'll ask the crowd how they're doing, or say just a generic like, hey guys, what's up?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't ask the crowd how they're doing because they've already been asked 14,000 times that night. I'll just throw in some random one-liner, like almost before I even grab the microphone, just to catch the attention. Because if I can get a chuckle or a laugh right away, then I'm already in the door. Whereas I come up and I'm like, hey guys, my name's Casey. Nobody's gonna laugh at that unless they think Casey's a girl name or something, but.
Oh, that would just be mean.
Well, it happens, but I like to just throw out, anything like one of them. I started my set and I just said, "Oh man, I hope this microphone is gluten free." And that
don't burn your jokes on this podcast, man.
Oh no, that one's already out there. I already used that one, but yeah, the whole place laughed, and then they laughed harder at some of my jokes that I didn't think that would get that big of a laugh. Yeah. But I think it's from just sliding that one in there really quick and capturing attention right away.
Yeah. So how are you, have you kind of cemented yourself along with any other up-and-coming comedians from your area, or are you still, how is your experience in that scene?
As of right now, I'm kind of on my own. I started with the same night I did my first open mic, another kid was doing his. And he's, it's been, I think, 3 months now, and he's already kind of dropped off. But it was nice, to see him, and then him and I would show up at mics together and stuff. But he seems to have already kind of moved on. And so right now I'm still kind of by myself. I'm stuck between that little area where, okay, this is my first night, and this is my 50th night, where...
Yeah.
I'm talking with all these comics who are, established. They've been doing it for years and years, and they're kind of like, oh yeah, well, do you want to come do this? And I'm like, well, I'm not ready, for that. Like, I don't have 10 minutes yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, they want 10 minutes and they want to give me $50 to do it, but I can't do that. And so, I think right now where I'm at is trying to hold back so I don't try to do too much too quickly.
Yeah.
Because I show up and somebody's expecting 10 minutes and I give them 7, then, I look like an asshole. So,
So just to clarify, so you have 10 minutes, but it's not all great. You want to have a great 10 minutes, correct? Yeah. That's what I think a lot of people who aren't as, I guess who aren't as versed in that would maybe think like, what? You can only write 7 minutes of jokes? But no, it's you want to make sure you have 7 minutes of great jokes. You don't want to just come and try out new open mic stuff on with a paying gig.
Right.
Well, bands don't think that way. Bands will just feel like, we can play for an hour? Yeah, we know a couple covers too.
Yeah, cover songs. Those are great. That's one thing bands can get away with that I don't think a comic can.
Cover songs? Holy shit. No, I'm just a cover comedian. You're not getting it.
Yeah, I just do other people's stuff. Just wait, I got a costume for this one. Like,
holy shit. That's, oh man.
Yeah, it's very similar but very different at the same time between comedy and music. It's really interesting.
Now, that's really cool. And this is another thing. I know there's the common joke of every comic wants to be a musician, every musician wants to be a comic. And that's seeming a lot less like a joke because almost every comic I've talked to has done music at some point. I think maybe we're at I've talked to 7 comics, 6 of 7 have now had some foot in the music door before they did comedy.
The funny thing is I hate being on stage. When I was with the band, I didn't like it at all. Where even helping load gear on and off I didn't like it. But the first time I got up for my first open mic, I was terrified. You know, I could barely walk up to the stage. And then I got my first laugh, and I just kind of blacked out. Like that scene in Old School with Will Ferrell when he just kind of like rambles off that answer for
Yeah.
in that competition they're doing. Yeah. That's what happened with my first open mic, and luckily I had it on video, so I can go back and watch it and like pick out stuff. But I don't remember it, and I think that's the part I tell people. You know, if they're thinking about trying it, just go up there. Because it's, I mean, even if nobody laughs, you still gave it a shot. And you can sit here and wonder for 50 years, oh, I wonder what would have happened, or you can go do it tonight. You know, just get up there, make it happen. It's not that bad. I guarantee you've had worse stretches of 3 minutes in your life.
Holy shit, that's I like that quote. Yeah, I guarantee you've had worse stretches of 3 minutes in your life. That's really, really good.
You can go ahead and use that wherever you want.
Oh, I will. Oh, I will. That's fantastic. Oh, I like that. That's really cool. So, dude, I've definitely blacked out on stage before, but for very different reasons.
Right.
Dude, I remember waking up. I was in for about 3 years. I was in this like half original, half cover band, where we were like straight up just rock and roll. Like Kings of Leon were really big at the time, and so we just rode that in Black Keys. We just rode that fucking wave into countless bar dollars. And so, I remember, you make some money covering songs.
Oh, you sure do.
So I remember waking up at I guess I was at our guitarist's house, somebody's house, and I woke up and I was like, man, this sucks. I didn't get to play my bass solo last night. And I was like, wait a minute. Definitely did. No recollection. No idea. I could have just been like brr the whole time.
Oh boy, that's fun. Yeah, we had a situation not too unfamiliar. Unfortunately, it was our lead singer got blackout drunk before the show, and when the one holding the microphone can't control things, it gets a little sketchy. I remember the next morning we were trying to set up the cymbals in the practice area, and our singer was so sweaty and gross that he was hanging on the drum set during their show, and we were unpacking them, and they had arm prints of sweat, and like, it was just disgusting, like just sweat and like that where, you know, copper turns kind of green if it gets too wet. They had that all over our poor drummer's cymbals, and it was just, oh man, it was funny.
Stained metal,
but
jeez.
Yeah, it was a little gross. So that has taught me never to try to be blackout on stage. It might happen, but you never know.
Dude, oh my god, I can't imagine. Like at this point, like I play guitar now in my band, and I can play a little buzzed. But when I was playing bass, I could be gone, and it would be just fine. It would be just fine. Yep. I always envy the people, because I know people who like live their entire lives like just fucked up, and they can function perfectly fine. But to me, I'm just like, I can't do that one bit. Dude.
Right. That's definitely an acquired skill, that's for sure.
Do you ever drink before you go on stage, or other stuff?
I'm not a big drinker. I will have like one drink beforehand just to, you know, so I'm not that guy who shows up at a bar and wastes a seat at the bar without spending money. But I've been shockingly sober before I go. I thought, you know, I'd need a little crutch, but I really don't. I'm not sure why, but it's just what I do. And as far as the other stuff goes, I don't think I could, let's say, smoke something that's not a cigarette and go on stage. I would just be a drooling idiot, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I wouldn't put together a single sentence. It's like, but you know, I wouldn't be able to do it, I don't think. Obviously, I don't smoke anymore because I'm not in Denver where it's legal.
We're on the straight path now, so don't worry, Mom
Gotcha.
or whoever's listening.
You were in Denver for so long. When you got there, that shirt was white.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah, that's really good. So okay, so my next question, and I'm sure you get this all the time: how the fuck do you deal with the cold? I'm in Maryland, and I can't even do it. I can't go outside. How do you deal
Well,
with
I'll
it?
tell you what. I'm actually wearing shorts today. It is 11 degrees, and I just felt like wearing gym shorts, so
Yeah,
that's what we're going with. I don't. I guess you're just kind of raised with it. I I deal with it fine.
yeah,
I play hockey all the time outside, and so I'll play in a sweatshirt and sweatpants.
yeah.
I don't even really own like a winter coat.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
it like sits in the trunk of my car, and I haven't touched it in like 2 years. So I don't know. I just kind of do it.
Hats
It's
off to you.
not that bad.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Everyone says you get used to it. I just like I'm such a pussy when it comes to the cold. I prefer like if it's 90 degrees in my house, I'm like, oh, that's nice. It's a little warm. It's a little warm at 90. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
my room is kept at like 62. Like,
yeah. So outside of comedy, what do you do in the real world, or what do you aim to do in the real world, or is it just are you just
um,
going all in on comedy right now?
pretty much all of my free time is all comedy right now.
Yeah.
I do work a normal, 9 to 5 or whatever,
Yeah.
in a welding factory, pretty much. It's not the best, but what can you do? It's not terrible either.
Yeah.
Um,
And you don't. I imagine you don't have to take your work home with you, so you can hit up the mics
right,
whenever you need to. Yeah.
right, yeah. I work until 4:30 every day, and then I got a 45-minute drive into Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing that like 4 or 5 nights a week, and it's
Yeah.
getting a little tiring, but
Yeah.
you got to do it. So
Yeah. I bet. Yeah. No. That's cool though. Like that. Are you able to kind of? I guess when you start hanging out with more comics, are you able to actually hang afterwards and just chill with everybody, or do you really have to like
yeah,
do your set and get out?
most of the time I'll hang out
Yeah.
and try to watch as much as the other people as I can. Um, on Wednesdays there's a mic at a pizza restaurant that I've been going to that starts at like 8. And if you get up early enough there, you can do your set, and then you can run down the block to another bar that has a mic that starts at 10.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so I've been trying to do that. But yeah, I also wake up at 4:30 in the morning and have,
Jeez. Fuck. Yeah. Okay.
almost an hour drive home. So it's,
Yeah.
staying in the city till 11 and then getting home at, 11:45 or midnight, and then waking up 4 hours later can take its toll. But
Yeah. I was
that's
gonna
what
say that's
Saturday
not a
is.
9 to 5. That's a hell time. I can't, dude.
Right. Well,
I'm
yeah,
I'm
it's
impressed.
actually.
Your ability to take the cold and to wake up early is just impressing me so much.
Oh,
If I had a job to
oh.
give you, I don't know, I'd hire you. You sound like you're the perfect candidate for whatever it is.
Well, I mean, if you do and you're hiring out there, I've never been to the East Coast, so.
Really? Dude,
Well, not the Northeast. I've been to the
yeah.
Southeast.
Oh, okay. Whereabouts, as
I
they would
actually have
say.
a brother who lives in Charleston, South Carolina
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
Oh, cool.
Uh, it's a cool little area. I'm going to be heading down there in a few weeks to go
Oh,
visit him,
nice.
so it'll be a good
I've
time.
only been there I've only been to South Carolina a few times. I went to college or undergrad in North Carolina, which was
Oh,
like
right on.
cool area. Like, yeah. Huh?
Right on. Yeah, I've got some
Yeah,
buddies
right
there
on.
too.
Yeah. So that's nice. Yeah, you should definitely come up. I am spoiled. Like my area is spoiled as shit because I'm right between Baltimore and DC, which is really nice.
Oh, man.
But I
Yeah.
still bitch because it's 4 hours from New York. So I'm just like, oh, it's so far. Like, yeah,
Yeah, four
first world
hours from New
problems.
York. New York is somewhere I've always wanted to
Yeah.
go to, and I just,
Dude,
for
this is
whatever reason, haven't been able to.
this is how much of a shithead I am by where I grew up. Like our field trips were like Times Square, and then like famous museums in DC. And so like when I went to school in North Carolina and lots of people were, you know, coming from all over the country, people would be like, oh my God, we're going to drive 10 hours to New York. This is like an experience of a lifetime. And I'm sitting here just like, oh, it's so boring. Although that's the other thing is this is where like I not that I probably would have done it anyway had I guess realized that in my biggest, like, I got into lots of comedy specials, but the big thing for me when I started getting obsessed with stand-up, which is why I'm trying to talk to as many comics as possible, I love talking to comics and just talking about it all, was when, like, I used to, I guess this would have been like 2002, 2003, I used to, like, VCR tape Daily Show before I went to bed, so I just, like, have it or whatever, and, again, before good internet. Like,
yeah,
but
exactly.
every time I'd tape it, I wouldn't stay up to like stop the tape, and so it would record Tough Crowd. And after enough times of just taping over Tough Crowd, I was like, let me just give this a shot, and I just became completely obsessed with it. And like all the regulars, just like that was the first time I followed comedians who weren't already super famous. Where I'd like every week I'd go online to try to figure out what like Patrice O'Neal's up to or what Jim Norton's doing, and and they and so through that, but so here's the thing, when I would watch that, I didn't know how not famous they were. I didn't realize like how accessible like that was, and that the fact that, granted, I was 16 to 18 when that show was on the air. I wouldn't have been able to I wouldn't have been able to go to the cellar to see them on a random night. Yeah. But the whole time where all that is going on, and that whole table, the whole camaraderie of the table, and I know that still exists, but not like the way it was supposedly. Yeah. And just that whole group of comics, that was 4 hours for me, and it was extremely accessible, and I had no idea. Like, right there, yeah.
Yeah, that's like the first open mic I went to. I was in front of 4 or 5 different people who have been on Last Comic Standing.
Gee, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like I've seen that guy on TV, I've seen that girl on TV. What the hell am I doing here? Like.
You're learning.
But
you're starting.
It's the same thing with bands. I taken the knowledge I got from bands where you open for a lot of bands that you're big fans of, and when you meet them, they're just people.
Yep.
They're really good and they do something you really like, but in the end, they're just people. And so that has gotten me into a lot of cool situations where you just kind of hang out with bands.
Yeah.
Or hang out with comics for a while.
Any cool stories you'd care to tell?
Well, let's see. We went on a little weekend gig with a band called The Confession.
Mm-hmm.
And they were opening up for Avenged Sevenfold.
Oh, nice.
And so we drove down from Minneapolis to Lincoln, Nebraska to meet them. And then we were with them for like 4 or 5 nights up until Grand Rapids, Michigan. And every night, we stopped in Lincoln, we stopped in Omaha, Des Moines, and then up to Michigan. I couldn't believe what was happening. Like, I had to take steps back and just be like, okay, this is what I'm doing with my life right now. We've got the whole Rockstar destroying a hotel room thing going on. I mean, we're shooting Roman candles out, out the door of our hotel, like down the hallway, and it's just like, I walked into the room at one point and the TV was on the bed. Just somebody had just thrown it from the dresser.
Yeah.
Over to the bed. Then I walked out of the room at one point, and one of my buddies has his arm around the drummer from The Confession, and they're just pissing in the hallway, like just wherever they wanted. And so, every night was just something ridiculous on there.
Oh, that's fucking great.
Another night we ended up on the tour bus from El Nino.
Oh yeah, I know, yeah.
Partying, nothing big happened there, just kind of partying with those guys for a little while, and like they were trying to tell us how the bus used to belong to Soldier Boy, and that's
That's
why the
awesome.
speakers didn't work.
Of
I
course.
guess I don't
Yeah.
know.
Nothing but bass.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just like, these fucking
It
these
kind of
speakers on
sounds
this
like
bus were
Soulja Boy.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He like blew out the speakers, and they were pissed off about it, and so it's funny.
Dude, that's fucking cool.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Have you gotten to either interact or just see at like a kind of a cool venue any particular comedians that me or somebody listening to this might know?
Well, just in the local Minneapolis scene, there's a couple of names. There's a
You also
really
plug your
funny
buddies.
lady.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. There's a really funny lady named Mary Mack. She does.
Is she married?
Yes, yeah. She's married to another comic.
Damn it! So she's not Miss Mary Mack. All right, that's a shitty joke. Pretend I didn't say anything. Keep talking.
No. All right, we'll move past that and pretend it didn't happen.
I'll edit. No, I'll fix it in post. It's fine.
Perfect. That's all we ask. She's really funny. She has her delivery is the most unique delivery I've ever seen. She does like the whole Minnesotan accent that you see in the movie Fargo, and for some reason it is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend anybody to check her out. It's just Mary Mack, and then there's another guy named Tommy Ryman. He's from Minneapolis as well. He's one of the ones who was on Last Comic. And he's really funny. He's got some really funny lines. He's got those type of jokes. When he says them, I get angry because they're so good.
There's songs like that. I'll hear a song and I'm like, God damn it! God damn it!
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like he said a line the other day, and I laughed, but then I was like, what? Why can I not think of something like that? Like, that is so GD clever.
Yeah.
But, oh, man, yeah, it's just, there's a couple of people like that around here. And then just as far as any cool venues, I don't think you're going to get much better than Acme in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
It's a super cool, it's like kind of down underground, kind of like the Comedy Cellar in New York. It's just a small little stage, but they have these huge names come through, and it's like I said, probably 250 people, and it's probably the best place in the city to watch comedy. To be honest with you,
that's a great size because you have enough to fill a room where you can get pretty much any larger comic. It's worth their while to do a couple shows there, but at the same time, it's not too big that you can't just host a decent mic.
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy to go through and see the people that have been on that stage. And, there's been half-hour specials, hour specials filmed there. Like Nick DiPaolo just did one.
Oh, that's where he did that one. Right. Yep.
And it's so cool to see, and especially, being just some random jerk like me. Like, I've been on the same stage as, Louis or Doug Benson or any of those national names like that.
Yeah. God, Doug Benson, I can't I love Doug Benson. Cannot believe how successful he got. I would have never made that call.
Oh.
I've gotten pretty good at making.
It's got to be. Mm-hmm. It's got to be all in his podcast because his stand-up is pretty funny, but it's not national headline or funny. But he has so many different podcasts that he's super popular, and he's great.
Yeah, and the At Midnight appearances are doing wonders for him. Like, he is just destroying that show. Well, that's because I've gotten fairly good over the years. I got pretty good at just being able to go, okay, that guy, the big two that I must have been 16, and it was Dane Cook and Daniel Tosh. I was like, those guys are getting famous. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Those were my two bold predictions back then. And when so I got decent at that. But Doug Benson, when I saw, I was like, I like this guy, but there's no way, no way No, now he's blowing up. Like that's the other thing with podcasts is I've always loved like commentaries on comedy DVDs, and when I realized that podcasts are they're essentially the same medium for just a different type of comedy output, and just the fact that like I think comedy is getting such a huge boom right now because we have that the combination of Twitter, which is basically tailor-made for comics.
Oh,
like
God,
that could not be like the only better use for that would be like issuing like flood warnings or something. Like that's the only more practical use than a quick joke delivery system.
Oh yeah.
That combined with the popularity of podcasts, in that like some of the best like podcast the majority of people listening to those or who have time to listen to those are adults who have commutes or working schedules.
Yep, that's when I do it. I listen all day at work. And it's perfect, you know. It passes the time, and it inspires me to write funnier jokes.
Yeah, and that's why I think comedians who have more, not to insult the comedy appreciation of teenagers, but fuck them. No, but I think that's why we're finding a much higher correlation of good comics, or obviously it's all subjective, blah blah blah, but you know what I mean. Non-hacky comics. And insightful, honest comics, we're having a higher correlation of that and successful popular comics. And I think that's because through podcasts, we have a better medium to rally around people who are putting out good comedy.
Yes, yeah. A lot of, you know, the bigger you get, the more people are going to hate you.
Oh, yeah, that's art. That's show business.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, you mentioned Dane Cook and Daniel Tosh earlier. Those were two guys who would have me on the floor laughing, you know, 7 years ago.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
But now I'm kind of over it because they were so original, but now it seems like their style is all just kind of the same. Like just be, you know, with Tosh, just be super offensive. And with Dane Cook, it's just be super wacky and go over the top with everything.
I did, I would say, especially with the Dane Cook thing, with the I actually did like his isolated incident special a lot, and which made me think this one he just put out, I was like, oh, if he's on that same path, I think that's kind of cool, going for more honest. And then it was basically it felt to me tailor-made for a frat house, and I was like, fuck me. But like specifically with Dane Cook, I think there's two things I think on the Dane Cook thing, and I've been a staunch Dane Cook defender for fucking ever. And like one, I think it was kind of the Family Guy situation, where Family Guy came out with a very unique sense of humor, and obviously with the cutaways was something we hadn't seen before. And then once it got so popular, it's like they put a magnifying glass on the things that made them unique, and all of a sudden they became caricatures of themselves. And I think that kind of was a similar Dane Cook thing. But I also think, and this goes beyond those artists, into just all show business, period, I think, 90% of people are morons. I don't know if that's exactly the number, but it's up there.
A little low, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, so here's the thing. If you have, 1,000 fans, and there are people who seek out comedy, because you have to seek out comedy to like someone who only has 1,000 fans, you tend to be a comedy purist. So your fan base is probably going to be more, let's say people aren't morons, let's call them comedy morons. Let's just keep it very specific to this. So if you only have 1,000 fans, it's most likely you're going to have a small percentage of them are comedy morons because they're actively seeking out good comedy. So then all of a sudden you sell 1 million records. There are not 1 million comedy purists out there. You're going to have a lot of people who like you for quote-unquote the wrong reasons. And then you have the choice of what audience you're going to play for. And
you can pick and choose.
Yeah. And so in that, you can risk losing your gigantic amount of fans, or you can kind of play to that fan base, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. But some comedians definitely play to a more mass appeal, and that means they're no longer making something that is aimed to relate to me or aimed to make me laugh. And that's okay, but it's just it's just one less artist that I can really get into.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I'm not trying to say that, you know, Dane Cook and Daniel Tosh are morons by any stretch. You know, they know what they're doing.
The
It's
artist
just
is never a moron. I'll tell you that right
right,
now.
right. You know, I have nothing but respect for anybody who can do something like that in this field. You know, it's just it's not for me anymore. You know, it was at one point, but it's still kind of funny. It's not roll on the ground funny
Yeah.
that it
I'll
used to be
still
to me.
listen to, yeah, I'll still, like, especially with Dane Cook's a great example, because I would, like, cry laughing every
Oh
fucking
yeah,
bit. Like, so unbelievable. Never heard anything like it.
right.
And so now, like, I'll watch any special, but, like, I brace for impact every single time. Like, come on.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, it's like when you're watching a band that you're friends with, and they're, this is whatever, and they're not very good musicians, and you're like, just hold it together,
right,
keep
right.
singing on key, stay in time, please.
Yep, yep, yep. We've
Um,
been there. I've
um,
definitely been there too. You know, we the band I was with got semi semi recognizable around the Minneapolis
yeah,
area. And then there were a couple other bands from the same town that would try to like latch on,
yeah,
and you know, we would take them along for a while, but they just weren't there yet.
yep,
You know, you could tell they had something,
yeah,
but they just weren't ready for where we were yet, which was, you know, still a million steps from being anybody famous or anything. But
yeah.
there's this it's tough to watch people struggle when given good opportunities.
Yeah. Dude,
And
you know so much of what you're talking about. Like, this is awesome. I'm very
I'm
happy to be
I'm
talking to you,
pretty
man.
good at faking it. I'm really good at
But
just sounding confident.
the things you're saying, well, that's the other thing. The times you're picking to be humble is the exact. I mean, trust me. Yeah, I got you. I know exactly what you're talking
Yep,
about.
yep.
That's awesome. Well, we're gonna start wrapping up. So I wanted to know, is there any plugs? Where can we follow you on Twitter? Anything you've got coming up, or anywhere you want us to check you out?
Yeah, right now I don't have much as far as an online presence as a comic or anything, but if you want to follow my Twitter, it's KCF666, and that's just three, the three letters. Um, it stemmed from in high school. My best friend growing up was also named Casey.
So one of you had
Um,
to.
right. Well, we had a class together, and so we started writing. You know, our names. His last name started with a P, and my last name starts with an F. So on our papers, we would just write KCP or KCF, and then it just kind of evolved into the three letters
Yeah.
KCF, and then I just like the number 666 because it makes people freak out. Uh, I don't know. You know, it has nothing to do with anything people usually associate it with. So.
That's awesome. Well,
Uh,
if you want to send me your Twitter thing, your Twitter handle. I don't know why I called it a thing, sounding like I'm 50. You're that Twitter thing.
Whatever that Twitter machine is, yeah.
I'll post it. I'll post it with the podcast as well. But yeah.
Yeah, that
Well,
sounds great, man.
well, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thanks
And
for
good
having
luck.
me.
And we'll keep in touch. And if you're interested, I'll have you on when I do I'll just have like a bunch of comics on, and we can all hang and talk.
Sure, yeah, that would be great. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, well, you have a good rest of your day, dude. I'll talk to you later.
All right, take care, man.
See ya.